Welcome back to Podcast Recovery, everyone. We are your hosts, David O.
And Eric V.
Today we are joined by Manuel. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good, thanks.
All right, man. Where are you from?
I'm originally from Southern California, born in Long Beach, California, and grew up in that area.
Oh, right. All right.
So, I'm a Cali boy.
Yeah, I was confused because like you're calling us from the Faroe Islands, which is in like you said, part of Denmark, which is in between like Scotland and Iceland. Like Google Maps, thank you.
The accent was kind of throwing me for a second.
Yeah, and then
you really got to zone in though. You got to like go deeper and deeper because you can't just see the islands just with the naked eye.
yeah, I hear you, man. So when were you first introduced to recovery?
I would say, I was always trying to get clean off and on during my addiction time, but I think that I really knew I needed help maybe the last year before I said, okay, enough's enough. Mm-hmm. And so 2002, I would say, was around the time I was like, okay, this lifestyle is taking the best of me.
All right. And how long have you been sober for?
I've been clean since April 22nd, 2003.
All right.
So it's been some time.
Yeah, man. Well, congratulations for that. And without further ado, I'm going to let you share your story with us. So take her away.
Cool. Thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah, so like I said, I'm originally from Southern California. We kind of moved around a lot. I was born in Long Beach, but we lived in LA County, Orange County, Riverside County, San Bernardino County. We experimented with all the counties.
Yeah.
I grew up in a really strict family lifestyle. I was the oldest of four. Mm-hmm. My dad was an ex-Marine. He was in the Vietnam War. And, he was a really boot camp type person, very strict with a lot of rules and regulations in the household. Mm-hmm. And, when you're younger, that's all you know. But when you start hitting your teenage years, you start wondering, like, is this even fair?
Yeah.
And I think there was like a 7-year gap from the next sibling that I had, my brother.
Oh, wow.
And so I remember when I was about, 15, 16 years old, and they were 9, 7, and 6. And when the porch lights outside went on because the sun was going dim, mm-hmm. all the little kids had to come in, including this 16-year-old. So it was, really, really strict lifestyle. Back in the days when I was a teenager, we had those phones with the cords, the spiral-looking cords.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I was allowed one phone call a day for 15 minutes, and it had to be in front of them. So, social life, girlfriend life, and not so private,
Wow.
It was pretty tough, and when I became a teenager, started going to high school, I was making a lot of friends, and they wanted me to hang out with them, and these group of girls were just like, hey, Manuel, let's ask to go out, and we'll bring you home early so that your parents can trust you more and know that you'll be okay to go out with us more often. So one night we went to like a house party, and we came back an hour early for my curfew at that time.
Yeah.
And so I went straight into the reading room where my parents were, and they were, reading their books and paper and whatnot. And I just sat there with a huge smile on my face, looking at the clock, waiting for them to notice. Mm-hmm. And my dad, with this book, just over his eyes, like just lowered the book underneath his eyes and looked at me. He's like, "What are you smiling at? Are you high?" And I was like, "Wait, what?" I didn't even know what drugs were.
Yeah.
At that time, I was just like, I saw it around. I know people were drinking and smoking cigarettes and pot and stuff, but
mm-hmm.
I never messed with that stuff. I had no desire to do it. But when he said that to me, it kind of really crushed my spirit at the time. He didn't know. It wasn't like he was trying to be hurtful to me, but it did something to me. And the very next week, I went over to my neighbor's house to see if he wanted to come out and ride bikes and hang out. Mm-hmm. And his older brother was in town from college. He was we were in Riverside County. He was studying in LA, and he brought a bunch of his buddies home, and the parents weren't there, and they had gone away for the weekend with my friend. And he right when he opened up the door to see who it was, this big old cloud of marijuana smoke just came out.
Oh yeah!
I was like, whoa, what is this? And I could see in the background there was just like mountains of Budweiser beer, and he looked at me and he says, hey, he's like, yeah, my brother's not here, but do you want to come in and hang out? And I thought about the week before what my dad said to me, and in my head, I was like, well, you know what? If they think I'm getting high, I might as well try it and see what it's like.
Oh wow!
So I went into that house party, and I got so drunk and so high off of marijuana, and wow! I mean, that really took my journey into that lifestyle. I went so fast paced. I didn't even have time to turn around to see where I was going. And so my teenage years, that next year, I became extremely rebellious, and I was just experimenting with different drugs and different groups of people. I got into the rave scene really quick, me and my buddies were throwing warehouse parties and with DJs and dropping acid and. Nice. And smoking a lot of pot and drinking. So that was what I was getting into. And my parents, with their strict code of conduct, we just clashed. And so I would just, I just ran away from home and went to a friend's house where his dad was a weed supplier at the time and living there. And so we were just smoking a lot of weed and ditching school all the time and just getting into a lot of trouble. And then we got into, some other, he was a gangster. So we met some other gangster friends and they were into methamphetamines. So I started experimenting with that as well. And that just took me to a whole other dimension of what I can and can't do. And the only time that I would go home was if I got caught at school because they knew I was a runaway. And so like, hey, you can't be at school as a runaway because, we can get in trouble. So the police would come and take me home.
Wow, really?
Another time that I had to come home was because I got caught stealing a car and I drove it around for like a week thinking it was like my own car. And we had stolen it from a couple blocks down.
Nice.
And so, it was just, I just wasn't thinking. I was just always going from high to high during that time. And then I dropped out of school and I went to continuation or home studies or something like that. And my parents, and then I had to be home for some time. And I was getting high at home when my parents were at work. And I was watching the kids when they came home from school high off of marijuana and meth. And they knew it. So it was a really tough time. And the day after my 18th birthday, my dad says, you know what, you're a bad influence on the kids. We can't handle you anymore. You're an adult. I have an apartment for you that your uncle found, and that's where you're going to live from now on. So get in the car, pack your clothes.
Yeah.
So I was pretty much, kicked out of the house.
Were you like,
my dad drove me to
relieved by that?
No, I was actually,
or were you like scared?
I felt abandoned. I wasn't scared. I was upset. Like, how could they kick me out, like this? I'm their son,
Yeah.
I just didn't see the damage that I was bringing because I was like, well, I'm still able to watch the kids, So what if I'm high, I'm making dinner for them. I'm cleaning the house. You just compromise or you find, like, oh, it's not that bad type mentality.
Yeah.
And so, and I was, I think the drugs that were influencing me the most there was acid and methamphetamines. I was just, that high or the next high. And so I was always in a different dimension, if you want to call it.
Oh yeah.
For a long time. Yeah. So when I went to my apartment, I got my acid supplier. He gave me like half a sheet, and I was like, I'm just gonna I'm just going to be on acid like every day. I don't care what my parents think.
Oh, no.
You know, I don't know anybody around here, but who cares?
Oh,
I was just
that's a
in
bad
such
plan.
a rebel mode. And
yeah.
And I had to find a job and do all of these adult things I was just thrown into. I was like, I didn't know what to do, but, you know, my uncle found me a job doing construction and
Nice.
helped me get my driver's license. And it just so happened that my neighbors were marijuana dealers and their younger brother was an acid dealer. So I quickly found my connections out there too.
Yeah.
Which didn't help me any. I thought it was helping me because it was convenient and I would get my stuff and be able to live life, but it just made me live in that lifestyle all that much longer. And so I just did construction and was high and drunk every day after work for like a year. And I tried to go to school and to college, to a community college, and do that. And I got, at that time I was just you know, like a marijuana smoker, beer drinker, growing plants in my closet.
Yeah.
Lifestyle, and then going to school. I had stopped doing meth for a half a year. So I thought I was doing good, and I was getting up for work every day, and I was even starting to go to school. But quickly into the semester, I met a girl, and we fell for each other. And she was cool. She was cool in the beginning, but she just was an emotional roller coaster. And I couldn't figure it out.
Yeah.
My friends in college and at work, they're like, "Dude, just get rid of her, man." So I broke up with her, and I was hanging out with my neighbors downstairs, and then she came back over, and she's like, you know, "Hey, can we talk?" And so I said, "Yeah, whatever." And she told me, it's because I'm addicted to methamphetamines, and they mess with my emotions. And stupid me, instead of saying, "Oh, well, okay, well, that gives me even more reason to stay away from you," I said, "Well, you know what? Let's just do it together, so that way I don't flip out too much on you." and so
that's
stupid,
brilliant logic. That's total addiction logic right there.
Yeah. So then we got really hardcore into meth, and we were slinging it and living from hotel to hotel and dealing with these group of people that dealt in large quantities of that, and it really, really brought me down to this lifestyle that we were living in. We couldn't hold a place down together, and finally we were desperate enough that I asked my parents if I could come back and live with them for a while with this girl. And at first they didn't want to, but I said, "Come on, you have to." And so they let me come back to the house for some weird reason, and we withdrawed at my parents' house and tried to get clean and live a life out there. But she was really emotionally messed up. I got her pregnant, and she didn't like she didn't like my relationship with my family, because we've always been super close, even though all of this nonsense was happening. We were still really tight with each other. And so she told my parents that I was hitting her and stuff like that. And so my dad and my brothers came after me with some bats, and they wanted to beat me for touching a girl, because we were raised not to raise our hand to a woman. And so then I ran away from there, and I went to my biological mother's house and hid out there, who she was also an ex-drug addict.
Yeah.
And then she told my parents that she had been lying, that I'd never lifted a hand to her. She was just jealous. And so they drove her over to my biological mother, and we were over there trying to stay clean. And I got some work, and we tried to live a clean life from the hard drugs. We were just smoking pot and drinking, trying to live that life. But she didn't want to have the baby, and so no matter what I said, she said, "Either you can come with me and we have this abortion together, or I do it on my own. Either way." So we lost that child, but we stood together, and it was such a dysfunctional relationship but I just stood numb during that relationship by just smoking weed and drinking every day. And finally, I don't know how, but I just got the nerve to finally just break up with her and live my own life. And that worked out for a while. I went back to school and And I even stopped smoking weed. And I was just, drinking whenever we went out with my friends from work and stuff. And that seemed to be going okay. My family had moved from the Riverside County to Huntington Beach at that time, back in the late 90s. And me and a coworker were like, hey, wouldn't it be cool to live in Huntington Beach? And I was like, yeah, why not? Let's give it a try. So we moved down there. I stayed at my parents for a couple months to save up, but right when I moved into Huntington Beach, my bros and we started smoking pot right away. And my friend that came with me, he wasn't into drugs. He was just into drinking and girls and making money. So he said, you know what? I'm not gonna move out with you. I'm gonna move out of the state. So you're on your own. So I just moved out on my own with this party mentality. I was like at the beach again, and hanging out with the beach locals and smoking pot and drinking and working at restaurants. And that was my lifestyle. And somehow, again, meth found its way, and ecstasy and acid, all those drugs found their way into my life again. And when I moved to Long Beach to get away from my family because I knew I was a bad influence on my brothers. So I said, I just moved to Long Beach and was working out there. I had my own place, and I was what you call, or what I like to think, I was a functional addict. I was able to work. I had a really cute girlfriend, and we were doing super good together. And I was just, doing the hardcore drugs on the weekends, not so much, but meth really got the best of me again. Yeah. And that last time, and just the crowd that I was hanging out with, and I lost my girlfriend, and she couldn't handle that lifestyle that I was living. And so I was just hanging out with the people that I was slinging drugs with and going to rave parties and the club scene with. And pretty soon I was even too wild for them. Yeah. So then I started dealing with, the local gangs in Long Beach, the Samoans and the Mexican gangs, and doing big business with them. And I thought it was all good, they trusted me, I trusted them, but drugs make you act one way, but you have other thoughts going on in your head, and and they just wanted my clientele, and they wanted to just take advantage of me, and so I didn't realize this until my addiction became more expensive than what I was earning, and I was doing desperate things in Long Beach just to make money. And I became homeless. I was living on the streets for some time, and slinging drugs and just doing whatever I can to get my fix. And I never shot up, but the people around me they were mixing, heroin and meth and stuff like that, and shooting it up and using, I was just in these atmosphere. I was starting to freak out. I called home for money a few times, but they said no. Yeah. Because they knew that what I would use it for, and I just said, well, how about you getting me a hotel just so I have a place to stay? And they still said no. So I felt abandoned on that side, and worried for my life on the other side. And I became so desperate that I never did it, but I was even selling crack cocaine because it was just quick money, but the clientele was just super scary. Yeah. And the house that I was selling out of, they were kind of keeping me prisoner, saying that I owed them money, and that if I didn't pay off this certain amount of money, that I could never leave this place. And they always had guards, gangsters hanging out where I could never leave. Damn. But somehow, some way, I managed to do a quick sale that gave them all of the money back and left me with something left over. And before they could change their mind, I ran out of the house. Yeah. And didn't see them again. And I remember hanging out in front of this house, and it was in front of this complex in downtown Long Beach, and this really, really cute looking African-American couple just walked by me and smiled at me and kept on walking. And then the girl came back and looked at me and says, hey, you know what? You you don't belong here. And she just smiled at me and walked away. And I was like, what was that all about? What's going on here? And one of the last nights in this lifestyle, it was me and this local gang member that he had stolen a car, and he picked me up. He says, "Hey, do you have any stuff to sell?" And I said, "Yeah." He's like, "I have some buyers. Let's go around and we could split the profit." And I said, "Okay." So we drove around all night, slanging. And the last stop that we had was actually at this family's house. It was a husband, wife, and their two boys. At that time, I believe they were like around 6 and 4. Mm-hmm. I remember asking them, and we sold them some meth, and we were getting ready to leave. And they said, "Hey, do you want to get high with us?" I said, "Yeah, sure, why not?" So we were getting high with them, and I just noticed the atmosphere that I was in. These kids, 6 and 4, these boys were playing in the living room, running around us, having fun, and this was natural for them. Seeing their parents get high off of meth and having strangers in their house.
Wow.
And something just hit me like a ton of bricks. I totally freaked out, and I jumped up out of my chair and I ran outside just to get away from it. Mm-hmm. And I was just standing in the streets in this residential area, and what is wrong with me? Mm-hmm. And so I just went into the back seat of this stolen car that we had, and it was just sitting there, reminiscing, thinking about whatever. And this one memory came into my mind, and it was when I was young, and I was with my stepmom, and we were at we went to the doctor's office just for a normal child checkup. Mm-hmm. And I grew up in a Christian atmosphere, Christian home, and my parents were involved with church, and so I knew about Jesus and all that stuff, and I loved Jesus because they loved Jesus, type stuff. So this memory that I had was we were in this waiting room with other mothers and their kids, and they had a board to draw on, and so I told all the kids, "Hey, come here, I want to draw you something." And my mom said that the other parents were looking at me weird, like, "What is he going to say to my kid?" They just let the kids come in, and I drew the earth. And I wrote heaven on top and hell on the bottom, and I turned to him. I'm like, "Where do you want to go?" As a little kid.
Oh my God!
I don't know. I was just laughing because come on, a little kid drawing this stuff, and it was just funny. And I was thinking about this memory, and in the backseat of this car, hungry. I had been up for a few days, strung out off of drugs.
Yeah.
And I just felt like I should talk to God. Mm-hmm. And I said, "God, I'm so tired of this lifestyle." I said, if you're even listening to me, you can help me. I need help. Mm-hmm. And that's all I said.
Yeah.
And for some reason in that car, high off of meth, I shouldn't have been able to sleep, but I fell asleep. Mm. And the next morning, I woke up to my partner, the gangster guy, getting into the car to take off, and he saw me in the back seat and freaked out and ran away because he wasn't expecting anyone in the back seat.
Yeah.
And so then I woke up and I came out and I'm like, wow, that was the best sleep I've had in a long time. But now what do I do?
Yeah.
And so I went to I don't know how I thought of this guy's house, but I went to this random house where I had sold him drugs before. I knocked on his door and I said, "Hey, I need a place to crash for a few days as I want to come off of this meth. Will you let me stay here?" And he said yes. Like, I didn't even really know the guy, but he just said yes.
Yeah.
And so I slept on his couch for 3 days straight, just getting up to take a leak and getting a bite to eat. Mm-hmm. And then going back to sleep and just, sweating out all the meth.
Oh, yeah.
And I just remember it was around the third day, midday, around 12 o'clock. And I had the energy just to go out and get some fresh air and just let the sun just beam on me. And I was just, I got reminded while I was outside about that conversation that I had with God. And at the same time, I was thinking about how to get my next fix because it was due time.
Yeah.
And I just felt God speaking to me and telling me to go to call home. And I'm thinking, like, if I call home, they're just going to say no to me. I've already asked for money, place to stay, and they said no. And I just felt this phrase, call home, call home. And I'm like, well, you know what? Fine. It's 12 o'clock. Everyone's at lunch. If no one answers, I'm just going to go to my Connect and ask for a friend. So I called home, and it just so happened that my dad was home because he had to go to a doctor's appointment, and it was canceled. So he just stood home for lunch, and he was going to go back to work. And he answered the phone, and I was just in shock. I didn't know what to say, and I guess he could hear my breathing because he knew it was me. And he was just like, "Son, is that you?" And I said, "Dad," I said, I want to come home now. Can you please help me? And he asked me where I was, and I told him where to meet me. He came straight there, picked me up, and we were driving, and I thought we were going back home. And he says, "Hey, we're going to go have lunch with your mom, your stepmom." And I was just, clouded mind.
Yeah.
Freaking out about, I needed my fix. And so we went we went to this breakfast place, a Denny's type thing. And we met with my mom, and my dad was so excited to have me back and asking for real help. And he's like, "Honey, we're going to help him get a job and get clean. And this is great. And, he can stay with us." And I'm thinking in my head, if you let me stay at your house, I'm just going to rob you guys. I'm desperate for a fix.
Yeah.
And I turned to my dad, and that's something you don't do to a military man, but I did it anyways. And I yelled at him. I said, "Dad, shut up. I need professional help. I can't stay at your place because if I do, I'm going to rob you guys." And my mom is sitting across the table, and she's laughing. She's like smirking with this like motherly smile. And I'm just like, I turned to her. I'm like, "Mom, what are you laughing at?" I'm spilling my guts out to you, my problems, and you're just laughing at me. And she's like, "Son, it's me and some other mothers. We've been praying for our boys for the last couple years now. We meet every Wednesday and we pray for you guys. And 2 weeks ago, God spoke to me in the prayer and said, 'Get ready, your son is coming home.'" So I asked a friend of mine, "Hey, I feel like God is telling me my son's going to come home. He wants real help. What should I do?" And her friend said, "Well, there's this place called Teen Challenge. It's a Christian rehabilitation center, and I hear good things about it. And maybe you can call them and see." So my mom said, I called them and said, "Hey, I think my son is coming home. He's addicted to drugs. He's going to need some help." And they asked, "Well, where is your son?" "Well, I don't know." "Well, when do you think he's coming home?" "I don't know." They're like, "Well, all right, tell you what, we have interviews. We'll book an interview for this time and this date, and hopefully he'll come home before that." And she was like, "And son, that interview is tomorrow."
Wow.
So we already have an interview for you. I'm like, "How did you know I was going to come home today to do an interview tomorrow?" And she's like, "God just told me, and I got ready. I'm just being obedient."
Yeah.
and so I was just like, okay, if something supernatural like God is involved with this, then I think I need to listen and just, and so I went to this interview, and they said, well, they asked me about if I had a record and if I owed any money, and I said, "Yeah, I do. I have some outstanding warrants and stuff." They said, "Well, we recommend you get those taken care of, and then come to the program." And so we set up a court date for me, 2 weeks from that day, and I went in, and I thought they're going to be like, because I had a letter from this rehabilitation center saying I was going to go in, and they recommend me coming in right away. But the judge was like, he looked at the letter, he's like, "You can take this letter back. You owe this amount of money. You're doing 2 months in jail." I was like, "No!"
Yeah.
I thought I was going to get off, So I had to do 2 months in jail, but that actually did a lot for me because it helped me get really clean and healthy.
Yep.
And just really think about, why am I going to get clean this time? And is it going to be for good and stuff like that? And so after my time in jail, and I paid off everything that I owed, the very next month I went into this program, the facility that I went to was about a 4-hour drive away.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to this program, and I was kind of halfway in, halfway out, because I didn't really know. I hadn't been involved in the whole church scene. I always believed in Jesus as our Lord and Savior, but I just didn't want to have a relationship with him. I wasn't ready to, live that type of lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't really know if I wanted this. And there was, obviously a couple other guys there too, because you can either go on your free will, or sometimes the courts will allow you to go there instead of going to jail.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so I met a couple guys like that. And one guy, he had some weed. And so I was like, on cleaning duty, we started smoking weed together.
Mm.
And then he got caught. I didn't. They said, "Did you smoke weed?" I said, "No." And they couldn't prove it, so they just let me go. But it was just that mentality that I had. And it was an all-men's rehabilitation center, but every now and then we would do a work call with the women's facility. And there was this one girl that I happened to catch an eye to, and she just so happened to be from Huntington Beach like me. We joined the program together, and in my head I'm like, oh yeah, we'll finish together, and this is fate, and stupid me. And so we started passing letters, and we went to this conference, and I really met God at that conference, and I really felt like, okay, God, I'm going to give you my all. But it was too late. I had almost got caught smoking weed, and now I got caught passing letters to the girls, which was prohibited.
Mm-hmm.
So they kicked me out. They kicked me out of the program. I was 4 hours away from home, and I had to call home and say, "Hey, I got kicked out of the program. Can you come get me?"
Yeah.
my dad was raging on the phone, and I was like, you know what? Forget it. And I hung up the phone on him. Mm. And I called the only person that I can trust, and it was one of my connects. Mm. And so I said, "Hey, I'm taking the bus down. I need a place to stay for some days." And he let me stay. He wouldn't let me do drugs.
Nice.
He did the drugs in the back room, and I stayed in the living room. And just the pressure of wanting to do drugs was so strong there that I would go for walks and just pray and stay away from the house and only go there to sleep. And after a few days, I called home again to see if my dad was still mad, and they were freaking out. "Where are you?" And I'm like, "Well, I thought you didn't want me to come home. I thought you were mad at me." And they're like, "Yeah, we're mad at you, but we still want you to come home."
Yeah.
So they picked me up right away. I went home and I said, "I got to wait a month before I can join this program, but I think that's just too long. I need to get back in." They're like, "Well, why don't you call and just talk to them?" Mm-hmm. So I called Teen Challenge, and they have multiple facilities. And they said, "Well, you can't go back to the one you got kicked out of. But try calling the San Diego Center." So I called there, and I told them my situation and how desperate I was to get back in. And they said, "Well, you're welcome to drive down here for an interview, but there's no promises." Mm-hmm. And so that was in a couple of days, and I made that decision that day on the way there. Okay, if they let me in, I'm going 100%. Mm-hmm. That was April 22nd, 2003. Nice. Me and my mom, we drove down there. We met with the director. He interviewed me, and he said, "Hey, are you going to get high again?" And I said, "No, sir." "Are you going to break the rules again?" "No, sir." Mm-hmm. "Do you have any drugs on you? We're going to search your bag, so you might as well tell us the truth." I said, "No, I don't have any drugs. Mm-hmm. I just have my Bible and my clothes."
Nice.
And he's like, "All right, you can come in." And I gave my mom a hug. I went into the program, and I gave it 100%. And it was just an amazing transformation time for me, because I always thought about, maybe you might agree with me or not on this, but I always thought, once a drug addict, always an addict. Mm-hmm. Once an alcoholic, always an addict. Yeah. And the drugs was my problem. Mm. But in this program, they're like, the drugs, it's kind of like an iceberg effect. The drugs and that lifestyle that goes with it is what you see above water. Yeah. But the root of the problem, the iceberg, is actually 10 times bigger underwater. Yeah.
I love
and that's
that
what
analogy.
you don't see, and that's what we need to deal with. And it's your character and how you've chosen to define who you are in life has been the problem. And in Christianity we call this the sinful nature. And they said we don't want to deal with it. We didn't even deal with the drug problems, the addictions. We didn't even really talk about that. It was more about finding our identity in something that greater than us. And for us that was the Jesus factor.
Yeah.
So we found our identity in the way that the Bible says we are, that we're wonderfully made, that we're created in His image. And so that was what they invested in us, and it really, really did. It helped me build a much stronger foundation for my life and for my future, even to this day. And so I took my time in this program. It was only supposed to be about a year, but I stood a year and a half, and I even worked for them.
Nice.
And I wanted to get everything that I had out of that program, because they had a lot to offer, one, and the second, I never wanted to go back because it was such a tough program. It was like a spiritual boot camp.
Yeah.
And I had so many people in the program, it was like their third, fourth, fifth time going through it, and they were just like, oh, I can't believe I'm back in Teen Challenge. I'm like, well, why are you?
Yeah.
And they're like, well, yeah, well, I wasn't 100% the last time, but this time I'm going to do it. And I was like, well, then I'll make sure I do 100% here. I'll give it my all. And I find a new identity in this program, and I had developed a heart for missions, because I wanted to not just go out and do that stereotypical preach the gospel, but I actually wanted to go out and share my testimony and share about, hey, if you're addicted to drugs, there's a way out. And you can live a productive, successful life even after living that type of lifestyle for so long. I was addicted to drugs and living that lifestyle for 10 years, from 16 to 26, and I never thought I could get out of it. I tried so many times to get clean. The first time I went clean, I was clean for 2 years. The next time was a year. The next time after that was 6 months. The next time after that, it got less and less and less. And so I could not do it on my own, but allowing myself to surrender to what I believe is the creator of the universe, who created me and knows me better than myself. So many times I try to, and I heard, you need to just go in and find peace within yourself, with yourself. And if you think about it, it's like, how can you fix something broken with a broken tool? Yeah. You can't fix something broken with a broken tool. So how are you going to be able to fix yourself within yourself? Wow. We were like, if you believe that you're created by Jesus, then He knows you better than anything else, because He designed you. So let Him fix you, because He knows better. So that's what I did, and that's what I wanted to help other people do. And so I thought, okay, missions. I'm probably, I'm Latin American. I could brush up on my Spanish. I'll probably go to Mexico, South America, whatever, And during my time working for Teen Challenge, there was this Danish guy, him and his family. He was studying to be a social worker, international social worker. He needed a program that does social work, and he heard about Teen Challenge and about their success rate. They did a study back in 2007 with the Teen Challenge programs, and they followed people that finished the whole program, the year and a half program. How were they doing 5 years later? And they studied other programs too to see how successful their program was. And Teen Challenge's success rate at that time was 85%. That they were still clean and doing successful 5 years later after the program. Wow. The next program that came close to that was another private Christian program, and that was only 20%. And the other programs after that, which were, by hospitals, governments, and stuff like that, secular programs, they had maybe an average of 12 to 16% success rate after 5 years. So he wanted to study this program that had such a high success rate, and he came into his family, and they needed a student to follow, and the director at that time, chose me for him to follow. Wow. So we hit it off really well. And he said, hey, I see that you have a passion for youth, and you should come out to Denmark for a short-term mission trip, and just gain some experience. Yeah. So I went out there after the program and after I did my internship with Teen Challenge in California, and I went out there for a couple months, and I really felt that's where I was supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided to stay in Denmark, and I went out there in 2004, and I stood out there for 2 months. I came back home for a couple months to be with my family, and I told them I'm going to Denmark. I don't know how long I'll be there for,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm going to go to this school to get trained to do missions work and social work,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm gonna work out there for a while. And that's 2 month short-term mission trip turned out to be 10 years.
Wow.
So, yeah, I learned the language and was
Nice.
able to share my testimony and work with the local commune, which is the county,
Mm-hmm.
and other churches on helping develop prevention programs. Like, I have a heart for sharing my testimony to those that are addicted to drugs and want to get out, or alcohol.
Yeah.
And I would go to like the Salvation Army and Teen Challenge and other rehabilitation programs and share and do some teaching. But I found myself more passionate about awareness and prevention,
Yeah.
especially amongst the young people.
Mm-hmm.
So I started working in that area, and I opened up a few different youth clubs with the community and had a huge success rate with helping young people not find their identity in drugs and alcohol in the party life,
Mm-hmm.
but in finding their value and their talents and using them to be successful citizens in their areas. I did that for many years, and then I met my wife, who's Faroese. I met her here. I met her a couple times in Denmark, and then I was also asked to do some of this type of work on the Faroe Islands.
Mm-hmm.
So when I would come out to the Faroe Islands back then, we met again and fell in love, and then we dated for like a year, long distance. She moved to Denmark, we got married, and we did ministry together and helped open up a Bible school and do some youth work and projects with volunteer projects with the commune and the Red Cross, helping refugees, and doing a bunch of all different types of campaigns. It's just been really, really awesome. And then 3 years ago, we were asked to come to the Faroe Islands to do some work, and I was asked to be a youth pastor at a church, and I got hooked up also with the Blue Cross here on the Faroe Islands, also doing prevention and awareness in the schools and in the city.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we're doing now. We're been married for almost 10 years, and we have 4 kids.
Wow.
And just living the life. I get to travel all over Europe and share, preach, but also an inspirational speaker where I share about my life and how I got out of that lifestyle, and how, we all can do it. We can all get out of that lifestyle.
Wow.
Yeah, that's pretty much my.
All right.
That was
My
awesome.
life.
Dude, that's awesome.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now we're gonna definitely have a few questions for you.
Come, bring them.
And you sort of talked about it right at the end there, with like prevention and getting kids while they're young, and really like educating them about like the realities of addiction, about how like not letting that addiction lifestyle define your character. And how important is it? Because like you also talked about earlier in your story, like you kind of had like a strong parent-child like bond, like as a family, but there was also that rebellion there. So how important is the like to parent to child relationship, and like opening that line of communication to the possibilities and dangers of addiction going forward in their child's life?
It's huge. It's huge because me and my mom, we could talk about anything, but my dad, who I really looked up to, we could never talk.
Mm-hmm.
Only when it was discipline, and that because that's all he knew back then. They changed their ways with my other siblings, and they had a much more open dialogue, and that had its ups and downs too. But nevertheless, I believe that maybe things would have turned out a little bit differently if we had more of an open dialogue, and they talked to me about this stuff, about drugs, about that lifestyle, and where it can lead you. And because it's just like, like going to the beach with your small kids and yelling at them if they go close to the water.
Yeah.
Instead of walking with them to the water and letting them go, knee high, and then feel the waves crash on them and them almost lose the balance. Showing them this is why I want you to be careful around the water, because the waves can pull you in. You don't know how to swim yet. You can die, instead of just saying, no, you can't do that. And that's just what I grew up with. It was, no, you can't do that. And so I've realized that, it's important to have in the beginning of a child's life, a black and white, where you teach them the right and wrong according to your value system, but you gradually help them to make decisions. But the other side of the coin, if you just allow your kids to make all the decisions because that's what this new age way of thinking does, they have no foundation to build why they're saying what they're saying or doing what they're doing on. We got to build a strong foundation for them first, and then help them to build on top of that. And so we let parents know that, hey, if you want them to know your value system, then you need to implement it as soon as possible, because otherwise their values are going to be strongly influenced by the school system, which is not necessarily bad, but also by media, by other friends, and what they're experiencing in their households. And so we have to have an open dialogue, and it's so important that it starts with the family first, because the family, when done right, can be the healthiest environment known to mankind. Is the family when it's done to the best of its ability in a healthy, open dialogue where you grow together, you journey together, and you speak together.
Absolutely.
So I think it's very, very important that we have an open dialogue, and it starts with the family.
All right. What do you got, Eric?
Does that answer that question?
Oh, perfectly, dude. And dude, the analogy about like the waves crashing and then
great.
like teaching your child about the dangers of the ocean, like it's that perfect.
Yeah.
All right. So I guess the next question I have is, both David and myself kind of come from different recovery backgrounds than yourself.
Right.
And not to say that I haven't heard of or met people that have similar backgrounds to yourself. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, do you believe your faith is the catalyst for what keeps you clean? Or do you believe there's other external factors, possibly family and friends, but do you believe faith is kind of the backbone of why you're sober?
For me, I can't, say for other people, but for me, yes, I believe faith is the firm foundation that I build my relationships on with my family and friends, that I make my decisions on my future, and even when I fall short, because I've had a lot of friends in this Teen Challenge Christian program that has such a high success rate. And one guy, he came back into the program after being clean for 7-8 years. He said he had his morning devotion, great time with God, and then he went into the kitchen, got into a huge argument with his wife, and was so mad, went straight to the bar and got stupid drunk, then found his old connect and started doing some other drugs. And went on a hardcore run for like 6 months before he, went back to Teen Challenge to get help, because he got in trouble with the law.
Yeah.
And he said the reason why that happened was because he forgot to run to his faith right away. He forgot to run to his firm foundation, because we're going to have shortcomings. We're going to have arguments. We're going to have things that just really push our buttons. And and I've had times where I haven't done any hardcore drugs, but I drink a little bit too much. I ate a marijuana brownie with one of my roommates one time, just because I wanted to fit in with him and him not feeling comfortable.
Yeah.
And I could have said, "Oh no, I did drugs again. Oh no, I got kind of drunk. I might as well just continue on because I'm a total screw up, and once an addict, always an addict." I said, "No, I messed up, and I ran straight to my faith, which is Jesus. And I said, Jesus, I really screwed up, but I need you, and I'm so glad you're in my life. And I never looked back again. And that was many, many years ago that happened.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so for me, without faith in something bigger than me, and that knows me better than myself, I'll just keep on running, and I'll run so far away I won't even know where I am, and I'll probably do it is just like the old parable. You clean yourself up, but you don't put anything in you to keep away the nonsense. The biblical thing is that it says that Jesus says that you clean up your inside, you get clean and everything, you kick out all the demons, but you don't fill yourself with me. You don't fill yourself with the Spirit. So those same demons that once haunted you before, they look for another place to go. They can't find any other place, and they come back to your place, to you, and they find that you're nice and clean, but you're empty. The house is not full, so they come back and live with you, and your lifestyle is actually 7 times worse than it was before. And that's I can totally see that in my life. That every time I try to get clean on my own, and I was clean for a while, I fell back into that lifestyle. Yeah. And that was even worse than it was before. I would do even worse things than I did before. So whenever I screw up now, I'm like, you know what? No. Yeah, I screwed up. I'm human. I'm going to mess up. But I'm going to run back to my Jesus because I want him to fill me, because he knows me better and he'll take care of me. And it's worked every single time. Every single time. For me.
All right.
That's great.
All right. I got a question for you.
Yeah.
How dangerous, because you talked about it in your story, how you would put down the methamphetamines for a little while, and you would just be like, okay, I'm just drinking and smoking weed. How dangerous is it to sort of quantify the levels of drugs? These harder drugs are worse than these smaller drugs, and using that substitution method in our minds to weed and alcohol are better than meth, but I'm still using.
Exactly. And that's the one thing I really liked about Teen Challenge, and I saw that there might have been some other issues about other programs, was that we have an addiction problem, which develops because of our lifestyle, right?
Yep.
And we have to be honest about that addiction. It's an addiction, and I've heard you guys talk about other things. Sometimes we find a way to supplement that addiction from illegal drugs, alcohol, or whatever, and we'll do it in eating, we'll do it in work, we'll do it in whatever. So there needs to be that balance. And so with drugs, if you have an addictive personality, then we need to really just cut that addiction by the throat, cut that head off, and don't allow anything. So in Teen Challenge, we weren't even allowed to smoke. There was not even smoking allowed in their cigarettes.
Wow.
And that's one of the hardest things to kick. But I saw people, not just one or two, but hundreds of people that came in with smoking addictions just as well. And because they were forced not to smoke, and they were in an environment where they couldn't smoke and no one else smoked, they quickly were able to kick that as well. People that were smoking 5 packs of cigarettes a day, and the next day were just like, okay, let's move on.
Yeah.
If you have issues with addictions, it's so important that you say, you know what? At least for now in my life, I need to say no to all addictions.
Yeah. What do you got, Eric?
So, I guess, hold on. I'm reading about this right now. But I guess this is kind of going to go off the faith thing as well. What does spirituality mean to you?
Say again? Spiritual what?
What does spirituality mean to you?
Spirituality. Yeah. I think it has to do with unity with the one that created you.
Nice.
You don't become a robot. The Bible says that we should have the attitude of Jesus. It doesn't say that we should be Jesus. Paul, another person in the Bible says, do what I do because I do because I do what Jesus does. But he was still Paul. I'm still Manuel. You know, so we're all individuals, wonderfully made differently from each other, but we can celebrate our differences. And I think that's what spirituality does for us when we're able to celebrate unity, because there's unity in God. You know, God the Father, God the Son, and God the Spirit practices this perfect fellowship through spirituality, and they're inviting us into that same spirituality, which really helps us to really think of what we do with an eternal value, and it puts things into a bigger picture for us. So I don't make decisions. I try not to make these decisions out of reaction, but out of response. And that response is influenced by spiritual heavenly values. I try, you know, we're human. We still think with our natural brain. But you know, to me, that's what spirituality is celebrating each other together and helping each other the same way that we've received help from our higher power, which is, for me, Jesus.
Nice.
Cool.
All right.
So let me do one. Can you do one?
Okay. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So I have a question. I'm going to break one of our rules that we talk about. So we had someone on the other night from another fellowship called Celebrate Recovery. And,
Cool.
you know, there's fellowships like, you know, NA, AA, Smart Recovery,
Refuge recovery.
yeah,
lots of
maintenance,
stuff. Yep.
maintenance management. That is a program, and some people, you know, might disagree with it, but it is a program and it does help people. So that's all that really matters. But what I wanted to kind of like, I guess, ask is, you know, I'll preface this before, just so you know, is that like it doesn't really matter your method of recovery. All that matters is that you're aiming for it. But what does it mean in your program and like for yourself more than anything else, not just your program? What does it mean to you to be clean and sober and on a path of recovery? Because, you know, even for me and David, that looks different, right? And even for myself and my wife, like that's different. Like we're both in recovery, but we have different ideas of what being clean is and what being in recovery is. So I'm wondering from like your perspective, what does that mean?
It's a good question. Obviously, I mean, just the definition of clean and recovery is, you know, kind of self-explanatory. I think, but clean, I think if you want to take it to the next level, it's more about purity. Purity is not about perfection, but it's about closeness.
Nice.
It's about. I heard a definition of purity. It was about completeness. So clean, if you take it into a form of being pure, you find completeness in being clean. You know, we would fill ourselves with a bunch of dirty stuff that doesn't complete us. It just makes us dirty. It makes us actually empty. We're thinking that we're filling ourselves with something that just drains us. When we find ourselves saying, "Hey, you know what? I want to live a clean life. I want to live a pure life. I need to be complete in something that's real, something that can to not only bless me and take my life to the next level, but the lives around me." You know, you find completeness in fellowship with other people. We're not meant to live life alone in solitude. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
You know, you're not more intelligent because you could do things by yourself. You actually become more intelligent when you could do things together.
Yeah.
So completeness is purity. Purity is clean. And so I think that's what cleanness means for me. Recovery. I think recovery is more of a like restoring relationships, restoring how you think about yourself, restoring the gifts and the talents that you were born with, and using them to develop yourself into something that is successful, both personally, but also, like I said, again, in the society that you're in. You know, how can we recover what was lost or broken and renew it and make it even better than it was before.
Oh, wow.
I guess that's how I would look at being clean and also recovery.
That's awesome. That's a great answer.
That was an amazing answer.
Yeah.
I'm sitting over here like second guessing whether I should even ask you my last question.
No, please, man.
Because I'm like, oh,
come on.
I was like,
This
how
is
can I
great
follow
stuff.
that? Oh, Eric just killed it. Okay. All right. This is gonna be like kind of like a two-part question.
Okay.
So you talked about how in your program they sort of talked about a sinful nature that sort of was underlying like root causes of why we had exhibited our addiction and like in what forms we did that. And in our programs that we use, we call those things like character defects, like things that are just sort of yeah, they're just sort of like naturally in us, and we choose to like act out on them in certain ways. And I really loved when you made the iceberg analogy, and like with your program, like addiction is very much like an iceberg. Like you're just gonna see that little bit on top, but everything that's underneath it is really the bulk of the mass. And so like I just want you to like talk about like how similar are like those sinful natures to character defects, and what some of like the underlying issues are or were with your addiction, in active addiction, and how they've sort of manifested in recovery, like, you know?
Yeah. So did you call them character defects?
Yeah.
Is that what you called it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a cool phrase. I like that. Yeah. So I believe that we all have these sinful nature character defects, and it has a lot to do with wanting to be so independent and so right all the time. And even when we know we're kind of wrong, our pride will get in the way.
Oh, yeah.
And we'll just act out what we think is right, even though we see it damaging us and those around us.
Mm-hmm.
And it's until we surrender our right to be right, and say, okay, there's something more to this, and I need to step back and look at the damage that I'm causing from what I think is right, because it's not, and I need to and that's what I had to do. I had to spend some time away from my environment and my everyday lifestyle, and what I did is I went into this program and found out that what was causing this character defect and make it even worse was my rebellion, which is pride, on wanting to be independent. I had the right answers, and no one else can help me or change my mind.
Yeah.
And I had to allow people to speak into my life that had more life experience than me, and say, hey, look, this is what your lifestyle, this is where it brought you, and this is where it will continue to take you. And if you surrender your way and allow another way to help lead you and guide you. There's a scripture full of wisdom, and it says, lean not on your own understanding, but in all your ways surrender them to the higher power, which is for me, the Lord Jesus. So I had to say, okay, my way is taking me nowhere fast. Yeah. And I want to go somewhere. So that's how I dealt with my character defects. And what was funny, I like how you said that, was I thought going through this program, then being called out to the mission field, I thought I had arrived in life. I thought, yes, I am complete. Yeah. I am perfect. There's going to be no issues. I got this, And it was a rude awakening in so many different chapters of my life, where I realized I still have a lot of work to do on these character defects.
Yeah.
But what motivated me to work on them and not get discouraged was the mentality that in the eyes of my Creator, I am complete, I am renewed, I am wonderfully made. And maybe I'm not there yet, but He's not bound by time.
Yeah.
I am. And so I'm on my journey to get to where He already looks at me as.
Nice.
You know, He already sees the complete me, and my motivation is journeying to get there and maturing every day, renewing the way that I think every day, to think not overly highly of myself, but knowing that I can be a better person in a humble way.
Yeah.
And that's a really fine balance. And some days I have some great victories, and others I'm just like, oh, that was pretty stupid, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and then when you get married, I don't know if you guys are married, then you really realize some character defects. And then when you get kids, then you realize even more. So it's a never-ending journey. Yeah. But it's a great journey. I love it. I wouldn't trade it for the world.
All right. Well, awesome. Yeah, man. That was. And now I'm happy. Like your answer saved my question.
Okay.
Oh man.
Glad.
I think I'm good.
Yeah. Yeah. That was great. I appreciate the differences that recovery has to offer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I'm like scrolling through my phone about this, and like ideologically. Thank you. I'm a little like, I mean, our program couldn't be more different, but we're both on like, you know, a path of recovery, and we can support each other in that. And that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That it doesn't really matter what our path is or what our journey is, but we can support one another on that path or on that journey. And I think that's a really powerful message. And I think it's just really cool how varied everyone is. Yeah. And it's just a pleasure to like hear different stories and how people, you know, recover. And I think it's great.
Yeah.
But yeah. All right, David.
I love that we can celebrate each other.
Yeah.
Not just support each other, but celebrate each other. Because I've had some friends that say, "Oh, Manuel, I started smoking again, or I got drunk the other day." And I'm like, "Well, how long did you go before that?" "Well, this time I went like 6 months." "Well, let's celebrate that you went 6 months and go for even longer." Instead of saying, "Oh man, you ruined all that time. Now you got to start all over." No. Let's celebrate and keep moving forward.
There you go.
Together.
I like that. That's good.
I do have one favor to ask.
Yes.
Can you say something in Danish for us?
Det kan jeg godt. Tak for i dag, og tak for jeres venskab. And I said in the beginning, yes, I can say something. And I said, thank you for today, and thank you for your friendship.
Oh, cool. Awesome. Thank you for yours. So that was an amazing share. I got a lot out of it. And and it's going to be a pleasure to put this out on the airwaves and get your word an even bigger audience.
I really appreciate it, guys.
Yeah, man. Let me just close out here real quick. We'd like to thank you, our guest Manuel, for joining us today. Give us a golf clap, Eric.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
There we go.
Woo! All right. Here at Podcast Recovery, we are aiming to expand the scope of support for recovering addicts. Accessibility and convenience of helpful services is paramount to combating addiction. We work to bring the message of recovery to every addict, wherever and whenever it is needed. We believe that a powerful voice of recovery should be obtainable, practical, and at the touch of a button. Every addict deserves to hear a message of hope, and Podcast Recovery is here to provide it. All right, everybody, thanks for joining us. Follow us on Twitter, follow us on Facebook, like, join, subscribe, invite your friends, but more importantly, stay safe and stay clean.